I I found the inequity in the publishing space to be somewhat staggering.
Mm-hmm.
The book was able to be brought to life because of a great deal of privilege and access and resources. And throughout the whole process, I was asking myself, how possible would this have been had we
Mm-hmm.
not had this or this or this? And the truth is, it wouldn't have.
Welcome to Diversity Dish, where we're dishing on everything diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice related. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and we're bridging the gap between what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. Those individual experiences that are often ignored or simply dismissed. Sometimes I'm dining alone, sometimes I'm dining with friends, and sometimes I'm dining a la carte. No matter how I'm dining, it promises to be delicious. Let's dig in. Arthur Woods is a social entrepreneur and LGBTQIA+ leader working at the intersection of equity, inclusion, and technology. He is the co-founder of Mathison, a venture-backed technology platform equipping employers with everything they need to manage their diversity hiring efforts. He was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 and 40 Under 40 by BEQ. He is a 3-time TEDx speaker and previously co-founded Out in Tech and Imperative. Thank you for coming back to Diversity Dish. It's so nice to have you back. And today, my guest is Arthur Woods. And Arthur Woods is the author of, no pun intended, I don't think, but Hiring for Diversity. Hi, Arthur. How are you?
Hi, Sedruola. It's great to see you. And yes, I don't have a dish in the title, but we share the word diversity, so that's perfect. Nice overlap.
We do. Well, Arthur, it's really nice to have you here today. And I'm really looking forward to getting into the research that you've done and the work that you do in general. But before we jump into all of that, I definitely want to ask, and so that my listeners can also know, what is it that you are most passionate about right now?
Honestly, I am most passionate about working on ideas that help people bring out the best of themselves in their jobs every day. One of the things that I've thought a lot about is that we spend the majority of our lives in our jobs at work every day, and work isn't working for a lot of people. I think we saw that so much more in the last year than ever before, as people were staring at this same wall, not seeing their colleagues, oftentimes really kind of asking, wow, am I inspired and passionate about what I do? That's why I love that you start with this question. So I have this personal mission to help people become their best selves in their jobs, to become part of places that they feel a sense of belonging when they walk into every day. And I think we've got a long way to go to do that work. That's the work that I hope we can really make a difference in.
I think you're absolutely right that people have taken this time and they're kind of stepping back and they're going, oh my gosh, am I really passionate about this? Is this something that I would do even if I weren't getting paid? And I think the overwhelming answer is no, because as we also look at the openings, the job opening numbers right now, it's staggering to think that so many people are going, nope, I'm not going back to that. I'm going to do something different. And so they've gone back to school, or they're doing certificates, whatever it is, they're apprenticing somewhere. They've decided that no more. I don't want to do that anymore.
That's right. That's right.
And so
it's definitely a bit of a silver lining in some ways with this pandemic, that I think it's caused people to make courageous moves that they might not have normally made.
Yes. And I love that. I love that people have been able to take that time, but that they also did take the time, because it could have been that they had the time, but they didn't take it to do that self-reflection, or to even consider that. They were just more in survival mode, which, not to say that a lot of people are not still in survival mode, because we know that it's still very contentious, for a lot of people. But taking that time to go ahead and say, you know what, I can make a change, and then finding ways to do that, I think is absolutely incredible.
I do too. I do too.
So we both talk about diversity. I'm a consultant for equity, inclusion, and diversity. And when I talk about it, the thing that I say to people is always, I don't put diversity first, I put it last, because I feel that an organization needs to be equitable and inclusive in order to actually attract and then retain the diversity numbers that they're looking for. What are your thoughts on that?
I could not agree more. I love the idea of sequencing the D last, because I think, one of the things we wrote about is there was this total misconception among so many leaders that all of their problems would be solved if they just brought more underrepresented candidates in the door, right?
Right.
And I'm sure you've heard this so many times in the organizations that you've consulted. I mean, many leaders woke up and said, wow, we don't have enough representation in the room. Let's go find more people. Let's go source them. Mm-hmm. And to your point, they didn't look at the equity of their systems, the culture of inclusion that they were building. And so not only did they find that a lot of people just didn't even want to work there, but once they were hired, many folks were leaving, Mm-hmm. So one of the very first things that we said was, we can't have diversity without equity and inclusion. We hope that organizations will take a systemic approach to looking at the accessibility of their systems, and that they will be really mindful of the environment that they're creating for people.
Right. I think historically, what has often happened is you bring people in and you expect them to be a certain way, or expect them to fit into a certain box that is comfortable for you, not thinking that they need to feel comfortable themselves within the organization and within the job that they're doing. So I think that shift is really important to bring forth, that it's important that the culture shifts. So in your book, you've written a book called Hiring for Diversity, which I think is fantastic. What is the secret sauce? I know you can't share the secret sauce.
No. The whole reason for writing it was just to make it not a secret. Yeah. No, I think, first of all, I think there were a few things, and you were already beautifully touching on some of this, right? One was to get beyond this idea that this is a short-term initiative that only involves bodies of people we bring in the room, right? Yeah. So one huge tenet was, let's rethink this as being short-term and actually make it long-term, right? We're not going to figure this all out overnight. We're talking about changing the hearts and minds of people. We're talking about changing the equity of systems that have been long-standing and inequitable, right? And that have been working for a subset of our population since the beginning. And let's face it, there's a reason they were designed this way.
Exactly.
So dismantling, unlearning and all of that, it's like, we have to just accept that that's not happening overnight. So there was a huge kind of reframing, right? There was another major piece around shifting responsibility, because we found that, and I know as you've seen in all of your work, the responsibility of this work oftentimes is sequestered to this small group of leaders, the talent leader, the one sole DEI leader who isn't resourced, doesn't usually always have a lot of authority, is trying to balance a lot of other major obstacles, especially in this time where the nature of work is changing on a daily basis. And it's just completely unsustainable to imagine that such a few number of people will be the only folks to drive this work forward. So we were very passionate about this idea that let's shift this from becoming their responsibility to becoming everyone's responsibility. Right. And the final piece is that, we really found that there was this oftentimes myopic definition of diversity itself, which was causing leaders to operate in a very performative way, not in a way that was saying, how do we lift all communities that aren't represented? How do we instead make it look like we're lifting communities that maybe are in pop culture, And so I think this idea that we embrace a really holistic understanding that diversity is intersectional, that diversity is visible and invisible, and that, if we don't sort of embrace a more, inclusive understanding of what that really is, we aren't really even aiming for something that is common and understood.
Right. So basically what you're saying is, Hey, as you listen to the rest of this show, think a little bit about how you relate in terms of sensitivity to the people who are different than you. I've just opened up, again, my Educate to Elevate Racial Sensitivity course. It's a self propelled course that will help you feel more confident and more equipped to handle situations of injustice, prejudice, or discrimination. You'll learn, among other things, the Love Us formula that you can quickly access, allowing you to respond powerfully in the moment. To learn more, go to diversitydish.com and look for Racial Sensitivity Course in the sidebar. I look forward to working with you. Diversity is diverse.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, it really is. And I think that that's hard for some leaders to, to grasp that, wow, I mean, what do you mean diversity isn't just two things, and it's not just what I can see on someone's LinkedIn profile.
Right.
That's a shift, as you know, for a lot of leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's a mind shift that I think a lot of people need to go through. A lot of leaders need to go through, and understanding that the boxes that you've been putting people in and it have been working for so long just
Right.
don't work anymore. And
They
so
don't.
you really have to, really what we're talking about here, though, and what I say oftentimes when I am consulting or when I'm speaking or when I'm sharing with people, is that
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about is humanity,
Right.
right? It's understanding human to human, that as humans and as humans with cultural, religious, sexual, whatever differences we have, those things come with a story that shapes how we can or cannot, operate in this world.
Yeah.
And so tapping into people's humanity is what's really important when you're thinking about equity and inclusion, is saying that each person that you see in this room has a voice that ought to be listened to. Every person that you bring into the organization has something to contribute
Right.
that ought to be considered, right?
Yes.
It's kind of shifting in that way and getting, it's what's hard. And like you said, is that you have to change a lot of minds.
Right. Well, and let's face it, this involves, a whole shift of trust, as it's so many leaders, the reason they haven't done this, made this shift is they believed that this is going to somehow hurt their organization. It's going to cause them to admit that they're not in control, that they don't have authority, that they're insufficient. I mean, I think there's a lot of fear that has held leaders back from this shift. I do think something that's happened, and I'm really curious, what you've seen, given all that you lead too. I think many leaders we've witnessed have really woken up this last year. Mm-hmm. And I think they've shifted posture from, and I'll give you an example. We work with this amazing organization, 23andMe, the genetics testing company. They sent out this amazing note, after the murder of George Floyd, and they said, to paraphrase, when we did a lot of soul searching, we realized not only were we not contributing to the solution, we were actually part of the problem. The inequity that exists, especially as we look at medical testing, we look at the composition of the folks that have been, surveyed to inform our product, all the way to the very customers we serve right now. We're not leading it in an equitable way, and we're going to change that. And I love that it was so raw and vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And it not only was it honest, but it commanded so much respect. Mm-hmm. And a leader traditionally would have said, "You can't admit to being wrong. Are you kidding me? People are gonna get so upset with us. We're gonna be chastised." And it was the complete opposite. And I think it just was a testament to the times that sort of posture is what is building trust. And vulnerability is a path to strength right now.
Yeah. I think Brene Brown has a lot to do with that.
Yes, I do.
With helping us understand
right.
this.
She absolutely does. That I think people have really been listening to, her message and embracing it and realizing you're absolutely right. When someone comes to me and doesn't just say by default, my day's great, everything's perfect, and actually says, you know what, I'm not doing okay right now. That's a whole different way of building connection to someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, it's a different posture. So I think that to me that's a huge win in this movement. That leaders
Yeah.
are shifting posture.
I think that is a very huge win for sure. And I do agree with you. It takes vulnerability. It takes the not needing to be the right all the time leader in order to
Yep.
be the great leader that people want to be. I was making dinner with my daughter, something very simple. I was making dinner with my daughter the other day, and we were following a recipe, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this thing, and I'm going, oh, it's not, there's something wrong with it. And she says, Mommy, I don't think that you put enough of, I think it was butter. I don't think you put
Mm-hmm.
enough butter or something. And I said, you know what? You're right. I think I read it wrong and I didn't put enough. So let's put more in. And then I thought about it and I was like, how easy is it to just say, yeah, I think I was wrong.
Yep.
Let's do it. Let's let's
Yeah.
let's make
Yeah.
that change. Let's fix it. Right?
Yeah.
As a parent, I don't know if you're a parent or not.
Not
Um,
yet, not yet. But
that,
through association, we've got nieces and nephews that we're the gay uncles for.
oh, that's awesome. But
That's by the way, that's always the easiest. It's easiest to be the uncle or aunt that flies in and flies out. You get all the joy and none of the responsibility.
you do, you do. But you're also such a great part of the growing up of those nieces and nephews,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
But as a parent, one of the things that I've learned on this parental journey, my son is 15, my daughter is 10,
Mm,
is that it's okay and it's absolutely necessary to say, honey, I was wrong. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Tell me again. Let's figure this out. Because what it does, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's almost the same as the dynamic that you need within an organization,
It's true.
right? So once that happens and you can have that honest conversation, the next conversation will be much easier and you'll get more honest interchange because,
Mm,
that child goes, you know what? The last time she knew she was wrong, we talked about it. It was okay. Let's talk
yeah.
about this next thing. I'm sure that it's going to be okay. Right.
It's so true. It's so true. And you know what resonates about that? By the way, I love it. I love the example being in real life too, because I think sometimes we put ourselves in work mode and then home mode, and we don't realize that, to your point, these things are so parallel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Our posture at home with our kids is truly, it's truly symbolic of the way that we lead. It has a lot to do with our values and our philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've been thinking a lot about these stages of psychological safety, and you get to that, what third stage of, do I invite contribution? And then the fourth stage, which is, do I invite challenge, And I think, a new team member, it's just first joining and it's like still calibrating, like, how do
Mm-hmm.
people speak up here? How does, constructive feedback get received? I think people calibrate. And if, the moment someone overhears a team member that says, hey, I think you didn't put enough butter or the equivalent, you didn't put enough of something,
Right.
and a boss to respond and say, no, I'm not right. I'm not wrong. Come on. I mean, it truly does. It sends someone immediately to those, early stages, if any, to say,
Right.
oh, okay, don't speak up and raise your hand and challenge anything here. That's going to get shot down, So
Yeah.
I think it really does engender this, culture, for better or for worse, of how you will speak up. Your daughter is probably more likely to tell you when something else is missing in the recipe. Let's face it,
Right.
because of the way
Exactly.
that you responded.
Right. And it's just a matter of how communicating, right? Just shutting things down, but the
Yeah.
way that you communicate. And we also have a way of communicating that says, hey, we really want to hear your ideas while at the same time saying, we don't want to hear what you have to say. Right?
That's true. It's so true. Yeah. Well, and again, I think this gets back to, one of the things that was also really interesting about this whole work was, we had to just be very vulnerable in a spirit of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
We had to be vulnerable and say, we are not experts. And I, as a white man, as a gay white man, I am not the only voice you should be listening to. If you want to do this work well, listen to many leaders, listen to your people. You don't need authority. You don't need experience to have a very vital voice in this. Also, this playbook, we did a lot of work on it. I'm proud of it, but this is not the sole resource,
Mm-hmm.
And if someone is trying to read a prescriptive guide, we can try to be as prescriptive as possible, but I can guarantee we're going to miss something. Mm-hmm. So take this as a resource, take an iterative experimental approach. But I think there had to be this, this really dismantling of this idea of expertise and prescriptive strategy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, and we love to get, I think this is a white supremacy tenet of this idea that what's written is authority, right? I think we have to get beyond that, just because a book is there. I certainly have to tell you, I mean, I know you've also, worked with so many authors. I found the inequity in the publishing space to be somewhat staggering.
Mm-hmm.
The book was able to be brought to life because of a great deal of privilege and access and resources. And throughout the whole process, I was asking myself, how possible would this have been had we not had this or this or this? And the truth is, it wouldn't have come to life had there not been a lot of things lined up. So the very nature of a book coming to life, and you start to see the fact that we do operate in this world where someone has a book and all of a sudden they are an authority. And something's written and all of a sudden it's a little bit more sort of substantial than something that isn't. And we create these structures and these somewhat constructs that I think in many ways sort of pushed against the grain of what we wanted to sort of say here, which is let's all just take different points of view and try to navigate our journey in an iterative experimental way.
Right. It's funny that you brought up publishing. I'm reading right now The Other Black Girl, which is a great book, by the way.
Are you enjoying it?
I am. I'm loving it, and I'm almost shirking my responsibilities so I can finish it.
Oh, I'm gonna make a reminder to myself to get it.
It's The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dahlia Harris, who is a Black author. Mm-hmm. And in the book, the protagonist is working at a publishing house. And when you talk about publishing, I find it very, very interesting that the gatekeepers, those who are in publishing, are predominantly from a certain group. So they're predominantly white and certain schooling and certain, breeding, for lack of a better word. I don't really like that word.
No, but if you think about it, that is true. That is true, right?
Right. And so they're the gatekeepers. And if they cannot relate to something, then that thing is, no one's going to be interested in that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. And
so there are these doors that close a lot on authors of color, or authors, Black authors who are writing from a perspective that is not a white-centric perspective.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting that what we're saying, or what we're trying to achieve, is an opening to that, like cracking it open and saying, you know what, there are a lot of other people out there that are going to be interested in a whole lot of other perspectives, and that we really need to give those perspectives. Another thing that you said that was really interesting is we don't want to be the know-all, the one expert, which to me is the guru phenomenon. I think there were a lot of years there where people were gurus. And I thought to myself, how arrogant, first of all.
I know. It takes a lot of ego to call yourself a guru, right?
A guru.
But for some reason, the 60s really engendered this this so many, right? There was this guru culture. Everyone wanted a guru,
Right. So, but that was a spiritual guru. And then
right?
it grew into this, I'm a guru on, I know everything there is to know about Facebook advertising. I'm a guru. I'm a guru on Instagram. I'm a guru on YouTube. I'm a guru. I'm a guru for everything. You have a sales team, I'm the guru that you want. It's
Yeah,
almost this idea that I can do it, no one else can do it. There's not enough for everyone else, which I think is a scarcity mindset
it
that
is.
gets very calcified in some people. And so it's like if people aren't going to them, then they're concerned about who they are going to.
That's right.
But we're all evolving all the time.
That's
And
right.
so is technology, like faster than we can evolve with technology, it's evolving. So we can't be the know-all of, anything. I think it's just kind of like
I think you're right. I think we're all permanent students. And I think and again, this is a big sort of shift that there aren't experts and apprentices, there aren't experts and novices. There are permanent students of work that every day has to have a new lens, has to gain a new perspective. The very nature of it is that there isn't a destination, it's a constant journey. And I think for leaders, that's kind of scary because it's like, no, you can't attend a master class, get your certificate and be done with this.
right.
It is like, if you're signing up for this, as you're signing up to be a permanent student who by nature will not ever achieve this sort of guru status, right?
Right. Right. You better strap in for the long haul.
Yeah, yeah. But I have to say that the DEI leaders that I've been just loving, and I love this community so much because I don't it's very rare to meet someone who comes in and says, oh no, I know. No, I don't need to attend that talk. It's like the folks that I just personally took so much up from are the ones who are in the front row listening to a new speaker and taking copious notes. And just, it's like, there's a humility, I think, in the community that I think does recognize that, gosh, it's like we're soaking in new perspectives, and that's the fuel that informs this work. You know what I mean?
I do. I think someone asked me on the podcast, I can't remember which guest it was, but they asked me, they said, what do you know now that you didn't know before you started your journey as a, equity, inclusion, and diversity consultant? And I said, the one thing that I did not realize is how much I would be constantly learning and having to learn and continue to, I pull one string and it, unravels the sweater and I have to go through the whole thing. And then I pull another string and it, it's kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
That was, to me, I was like, I didn't realize how much of a student I was going to need to be, like a permanent student. You're like, oh, I'm done with school, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like, constant, articles and books and podcasts and just, soaking in information all the time so that it can be so that you can be informed and have an informed opinion versus just an opinion. And
I that so resonates, and I think that the analogy I've been thinking a lot about is the joy of like an archaeologist who, goes to a dig, goes to a site and is just uncovering so much. And it's like the past is informing so much about the future. And I think the one thing I personally, one of the many things I struggle with many things, but one of the many things I think I do struggle with is this constant balance between wanting to deeply immerse in the work, in the artifacts, right, while also being on this journey with so many that are trying to kind of press ahead. And there is this feeling of urgency, and because there's as there's just you could just permanently be sort of engrossed in the work itself, in the research, and there would be so many threads to unravel, and yet there's this balance of like, but I need to show up to this meeting and talk about this with a team and guide them through it and be on the journey with them. So it's I feel like it's just that constant balance, right?
Yes, it is a constant balance. And it's also, for me, I also find that I've had to put a lot more boundaries in place, even for, personally for myself as well. Am I going to read another book right now, or am I going to just read a book for fun? Like, am I going to read The Other Black Girl?
Yes, there's like
or
joy.
am I going to
Could it be fiction, right? I mean, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah.
I know. It's like, and because the work is so pervasive in life, there's an equity inclusion implication in every facet. It's like it's hard to turn that off, and you don't want to turn that off because that's who you are, right? It's a lot though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a constant, I have to constantly tell myself, no, I'm not going to post about this. I'm not going to write about this. I'm not going to think about this right now.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm going to go do this other thing that edifies my life, because
I love that.
More than just a one-sided person. I am a multifaceted person, and I would like to remain multifaceted in the different things that I do and the different approaches that I take. And because I think that that's the best way to also relate to other humans as I'm doing this work, right?
I agree.
We have to find connection points with others, with each other, so that we can connect at those points, and then we can inform ourselves of, as we need to go on in the work or what have you.
That it really resonates. And part of, I think, the beauty of continuing to branch out of the quote unquote industry, right? Whatever we want to call that, right? Or the domain that we sometimes find ourselves in with the work, is that we have to, I think, storytelling and metaphor is such a powerful instrument for shifting mindset. And we've experimented with, explaining something to someone by giving them, bulleted lists of things to do. And then by actually saying, let's actually just break this down to like a real story. And it's amazing how hearts and minds are changed by those stories. And I think, even drawing from fiction, it is a powerful way to explain some of these extremely complex ideas. So it's amazing how even that is contributing to this work in its own unique, powerful way, right?
Yes, absolutely. When you say fiction work, as I was reading a book. Well, this one, the Other Black Girl. I was talking to some members of my book club, because I do have a book club that I started to read Black literature specifically, because I feel that the more you buy the books, the more you read the books, the more demand there is, the better it's going to be for other Black authors, coming forth. But as I was talking to them, I said, the thing about The Other Black Girl is I'm reading it and I can understand and feel the protagonist's plight. I've read other books that I've enjoyed, but from the perspective that they were written, and from the protagonist, of course, usually it was more of a white protagonist, right. I could understand it and I could empathize with it, because, I've been raised in this society. But in this book, I'm feeling it very deeply, because it speaks so clearly to my experience, to my lived experience, and to the things that I would be thinking and doing. And that in and of itself is an incredible shift, right? That is an incredible thing to experience. And you wouldn't understand it unless it was something that you experienced yourself, right?
I completely agree with that, and I think it's power. Like, empathy is such a powerful thing to grasp, and I think to be able to, I think this is why it's so important that every single facet of our lives has representation, because it's amazing how we look at even just literature, and even looking at the publishing industry to see how many. The vast majority of people are white old men who are authors,
right?
And of course, it's like that means that that the books that are in the hands of the majority of people are written from only one perspective, really. And it's like we think about the implications of that, and it's like, wow, that really, that that needs to change, right? And
Right.
so to me, I think that is just, it's just so powerful to hear that.
Yeah. And, you know, and as we're thinking about it, it's also interesting to think about the idea that the historically the great thinkers or the great artists or the great anything have been from one perspective. So when you start to shift that and you go, wait a minute, there had to be other
Other
writers,
perspectives.
other
Yes.
perspective. There had to be, you know, other people writing things. There had to be other artists doing other types of artwork, but
Yeah,
they weren't brought forth as the greatest purposely, right?
that is
In
right.
order to
That's right.
create this dynamic or this vision that, oh, greatness only comes from one race and not from the other races. That
Yeah,
all is secondary. So
right.
in trying to shift that perspective, sometimes you just have to bring it down to the most simplest of stories, right?
True.
I'm starting a group coaching program that is specifically designed to help people tap into their strengths, their
Mm,
passions, and using the intersection of those two things to work in their purpose within
mm.
social justice.
Oh, I love that.
Instead of looking around and going, oh my God, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much, I can't do anything. What if we just look at just the areas that you're really passionate about? Are you
I love
passionate
that.
about art? Are you passionate about
Mm,
music? Are you
hmm
passionate about gardening? Are you
mm.
whatever it is you're passionate about? Trust me, you
That's
can
your fuel. That's your,
that
it's so powerful. Oh,
yes.
I love it. I love it. Did
Yeah.
you ever read the book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron?
Yes, I love The
Ah,
Artist's Way.
I know. Isn't it
I feel
great?
like I
It's
need to
great.
go back to it actually
We need to
and do it
schedule an
again.
artist date.
Yeah.
What about like group artist dates? I feel like that, my challenge
Right?
is I do these artist dates and I guess for folks that aren't familiar with the book, Julia Cameron was this artist, kind of what she had kind of like a writer's block. She was doing movie scripts, right?
Right?
And she had a lot of self-doubt and fear, and she tried to really kind of reinvigorate herself with joy around the nature of what she was doing, to kind of give herself permission to create.
Mm-hmm.
And that she would schedule these artist dates that were like the uninterrupted times to be creative. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was so cool. And by the way, this is something I really struggle with, because it's the kind of thing, it's like, well, oh, it's my artist date, I can skip over that. We really
Yeah,
deprioritize these aspects of our life, right?
we do. And that's why I say, you know, I really work hard to be very, very, very intentional.
Mm,
Saturdays, I say I'm not working on Saturdays. I just
yeah,
don't work.
it's good. Just
So
shut your brain off. Yeah.
yeah, so I get up in the morning, I'll take my dog for a walk, you know, we'll do a half-hour walk, and then I'll come back, take a shower, get dressed, grab my daughter, and she and I go for a boba tea date on
I
Saturday
love
morning because we
that.
have to drive like half an hour to get to the nearest boba tea
But it's
place.
totally worth it, right? For some good
Oh,
boba tea,
it's
you got to do it, right?
totally worth it. It's totally worth it. So we do that. And then right after that, maybe we'll do a little shopping. Maybe we'll have some errands that we have to run. But if not, we'll come back home. I get into grunge clothes and I'm doing a DIY project in the house because I love
I love
DIY.
that.
So we're painting our kitchen cabinets. So I'm painting the kitchen cabinets. But it's just about doing the things that move me, that feel good, that have nothing to do with the work and everything to do with my joy,
I
everything
love
to
that.
do with, you know, with my life as a human. And there are times, I will say, there are times where I'm like, oh, I really, I can maybe just an hour, and I have to say, no, you
You
said
got it. It
this
has to be
is
sacred. It has
you.
to be sacred.
It has,
I'm with you.
yeah.
It's
So what
so
is it that you
easy.
do?
Yeah. Well, I'll say, it's really interesting. So I found a couple things. One is that I am a huge fan of music. I used to play a trumpet in a symphony way back when.
Wow,
And
nice.
my life partner's in the music industry. And so I find even just the chance to sing or the chance to just actually explore a new music genre that I didn't know about. And this is like a good example of just subtle ways to get out of my comfort zone. I tend to say, oh, my favorite music is blank, blank, blank. Well, what about that genre that I've never heard before?
Yeah.
Why have I been so resistant to hear it? And let's go and again, kind of the excavation. Let me go uncover what is it about this that created community, that created, shared creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. And again, it's yet just like a subtle way that even exists outside of the DEI realm, quote unquote, right?
Mm-hmm.
That to me it actually teaches me something about even the work that we're doing, which is there is a whole community of people of perspective that I'm not aware of, that
Mm-hmm.
I've actually, for whatever reason, mentally kind of blocked myself from engaging in. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And then to appreciate it for what its art is. That to me has been just kind of a joyous thing that you can do on a walk somewhere too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can. There are so many ways to just allow your mind to wander. I mean,
Yeah,
is that's also part of the artist's way, right? In the book, she says, go to a museum and just take in the art, if
yeah,
in order to jumpstart that creativity within your mind. And there's
yeah.
creativity in everything,
There is.
right? And the more creativity that you can bring to everything, to whatever it is that you're doing, the the more engaged and more passionate you're going to be about it,
That's
I
right.
think.
It's so true. It's so true. And every moment that I think something that the DEI community, the DEI leader community needs to do a lot of self-care right now. And this is something
Yes.
I talk about with every DEI leader I'm speaking to, is that this year, this, everyone's been pulled in so many directions. And this, it's like it's gone from let's knock on the door to being pulled in every door, knocking on the door trying to say, hey, we should do this. All of a sudden, no, we need this. So it's been a frenetic pace, and that I think is the piece that I'm really trying to just tell leaders as much as possible. So let's try to take a deep breath and slow down. This work, yes, it is so important, but like if we try to rush right now, we're going to cut so many corners. We're going to leave people out. We're actually going to risk being totally performative. So the ability to take a deep breath and slow down is just something I think every leader needs to hear. But it means that I think DEI leaders also have to really care for themselves right now.
Yeah.
I see so many folks that are on the edge of burnout, because it's been feast and famine, and this is now feast mode. And so I need to get in the buffet line, 10 times this sitting, it's like, yeah, but that's not sustainable,
Right.
In terms of your mental and physical and spiritual well-being right now. So I think that self-care is just, I hope we're all creating the space for ourselves to go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that part of the burnout comes with thinking that people are thinking about it now, they're not going to be thinking about it in 2 years, and so I have to, do as much as possible right now. When
Yeah,
in reality, I really think that the more we keep talking about it, the more that we're putting it out there, the more that people are hearing and understanding and learning, the better leaders we're going to be able to work with, because they're going to be ready in 2 years. Some may just be getting to it now and not really be ready until 2 years. So there's an incubation period as well, right? There's this period where you take in information, you go, oh my God, really? Like, how did I not see this? And then you start to see different things. It's kind of like when you want to buy a new car and you're like, I want to buy this new car. And then all of a sudden, everywhere you go, that's the car you see. And you're like, oh man, look, that's the car I want. That's the car I want. Right? Because you just keep seeing it. And so
yeah.
I think that there's going to be plenty going forward. A lot more people are going to become more aware, and and there will still be work to be done. And so we can't burn ourselves out right now. We have
That's right.
we have to do the slow glow thing, right?
I like it. The slow glow, the marathon, not a sprint. It's like we've got 10 other laps. If we burn ourselves out that first lap, it is really not going to work, right?
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So
Yeah.
tell me, Arthur, how did you, or what was your catalyst for getting into DEI work?
Yeah, honestly, part of it was being, being in the being in the HR technology world and hearing how many leaders were just so significantly struggling with this work, right? Navigating it. And I was hearing, I know as you've heard so many times over, also just some dangerous thinking that was either performative, short term, a lot of leaders that just weren't empowered, that were like, you could just tell it's like, first of all, you're in the wrong organization. This organization does not ascribe to your values. You are this, like, you're trying to roll a rock up a hill and no one's there to help you with it. And that's not going to change. So I was kind of seeing it all. I know, I'm sure everything that, we're all kind of seeing right now, from the good to the problematic, and it struck me, how powerful would it be to start building just more community around this work? So people aren't navigating this on their own, but there is this support of a community of practice that shares values, so that we don't have to do this in our own sequestered lanes. What this idea of staying in your lane right now, to me, seems so antithetical in a time when we truly need everyone, to figure this out together. And I also just realized that, my own personal story of, entering the workforce at a time when it was a little less, the LGBTQ community was less embraced. There weren't floats in a pride parade, and there weren't people changing their logos for June, Pride Month, like there are today. I experienced some homophobia in my first job, immediately realizing that, again, this is a story that's rooted in privilege. I can only imagine the micro inequities that communities folks that aren't white men, are experiencing. And if I'm experiencing, a fraction of this to me is indicative of a much larger problem that we need to address head on, And so that was all kind of the catalyst for me. And I think it's been a joyous work, but, as a challenging path, because it isn't one that, this isn't widget selling,
It's not widget
it's not like,
selling.
Here it is, I sell a widget. Mine's green, this one's blue. We're all set. Go get it. Here's what, it's a complicated, category to be, like, truly unraveling every day. But also one that I just think is, like, so deeply connected to our values, And so it's been really, really just a purposeful path, I think.
Yeah, it's deeply rewarding, as frustrating as it can be sometimes, and as overwhelming as it can sometimes be as well. It's also very deeply rewarding. So, which is, why I want to create this group coaching thing, because I want people to not feel the overwhelm. I want them to find the reward, right? And find it within something that moves them, and seeing how they can actually make that incredible difference simply by doing what they love, but looking at it through a different lens. So, it's just I
really love that. I really love it. And I think this concept of tapping into the thing that brings you joy, the thing that brings you passion as your well of strength, it's really powerful,
Yeah.
And it seems like it would be so obvious for people, but the truth is we oftentimes are putting ourselves in a place that brings us a lot of fear and doubt and deficit mindset, not even realizing just what is that thing that activates you,
Right.
I think it's really powerful. And I imagine that body of people will really feed off each other.
Yeah.
And support each other and just become this, I'm so excited to sort of just hear how that community evolves. It's going to be really cool.
I'm so excited as I'm, pulling it together and getting ready to launch it. But yeah, I think we're so used to going to the drudge job, right? Yeah, I have a job. I don't really love it, but I do the stuff that I love on the side, or I do the stuff that I love on the weekends, or when I don't have to be at this job that I really hate. We somehow, it in evolution, we have disconnected joy with being something that we could do all the time, that we could
That's
feel
right.
all the time in whatever it is that we're doing. We're like, well, if I like it, then it can't be impactful. If I like it, it can't be, it can't really bring me money, can it?
Right,
Right.
right, right. There's no way. These are separate things. I got to retire, and then
That's
I'll
right.
one day
And
love life.
then,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. Yeah, it is really dismantling these social constructs, right? We have to give ourselves permission to be happy, to have joy, to find purpose. That's a huge thing, and I think that that's a shift that a lot of people finally decide to make. This pandemic catalyzed a lot of people to make, these courageous moves
Yeah.
that, again, we wouldn't have normally seen, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just like we were saying earlier, it's given people the time, and people have taken the time, right?
Yeah,
It's
they
one thing to
have.
have it, it's another to take it and run with it and do something with it. And so people have taken the time, and I'm really excited to see how things shift and shake out, because
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, where people go, where people land, what they end up doing, and
Mm,
how the marketplace, the workplace, has to adjust, right, to people versus people adjusting to what the company or whoever says must be the way to go, right? I think,
you're absolutely right. It's a completely different orientation and posturing as well, right? To be able to say, wow, we're putting our people first. We're embodying a sense of trust, and we're helping people become their best selves at work, and we're not asking them to be controlled. We're not asking them to conform. And those are all new muscles for
yeah,
especially traditional organizations, to try and learn how to flex, right?
yeah, new muscles.
New
uh
muscles, new
speaking
mindset, new muscles.
new
But
muscles,
this
new
is why it's a path
mindset.
for leadership, right?
Yes, yes. Speaking of new muscles, my son and I started doing kickboxing together.
Oh my gosh. You've got
I,
so many cool activities with your kids. I love it. I
I
love it.
did. Thank you. It's a lot of fun. So he and I, we decided to do kickboxing together. So the first week we went um, on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I was like, oh my God, I can barely move. And my son was like, oh my God, my legs are killing me. On Thursday, I was like, I'm dying. I'm dying. My legs are going to fall off. I don't know what's happening. And he was like, oh my God. It took until Sunday for my legs to feel better. Then the
Wow.
following Tuesday, we went back, which was
Yep.
actually this past Tuesday. We went, was it this past Tuesday? No, the last week. Anyway, I don't remember. So we went back and worked out,
Yep.
and I was fine.
That's
Those
amazing.
muscles, those muscles were fine.
Your
So
legs are now super strong. You can kick through a door.
I wouldn't go that far, but but it's just to say that it hurts to exercise those new muscles. It
Yeah.
hurts to make those big changes. It really is going to hurt, and it's not going to just hurt for a minute. It's going to
Yeah.
hurt for a little while. But after that, it's going to feel so good,
It's
right?
true. It's true. And that is truly, that's now a capability, like a permanent
Exactly.
capability that you have.
And here's the thing, right? I think to myself, if I stop going to kickboxing, I'm going to have to start again and go through that pain again. So,
Yeah.
how about I just stay consistent, right? How
True.
about companies go through that pain, make those changes, but infuse them into their whole everything that they do, so that they can continue and maintain that, so they don't ever have to go through that pain again. How about that?
That's right. That's right. Well, and this is really where, for this kind of transformational work, we have to have meaningful conversations.
Yes.
Hearing people's perspectives. I think about the story, the working out story, with the experience of either causing or experiencing a micro inequity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how painful that is, that if the conversation were to go from calling someone out to calling someone in,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden that can go from what will be inevitably somewhat of a painful conversation because it's like awkward and no one wants to be on either side of that necessarily in the time, but you can emerge from it a stronger person with greater perspective. And how can we proactively, ensure that those types of meaningful conversations are happening, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Arthur, is there anything that you would like to bring forth now that we haven't talked about, but you thought, oh, it would be really great if I could get this point across?
It was such a great conversation. I'm leaving this conversation feeling very full in a good way.
That's awesome.
This is why it's good that it's called the diversity dish. I'm feeling like I feel very satiated right now. Can I use that word, satiated?
Yeah.
So, I think for me, the thing I really loved about this conversation was that it's so easy. It really is so easy for us to get in this work mode around this body of work and sort of engulf ourselves in everything that is organizational change related and not remember that, what's happening in our life is not independent of this work. This is actually, they're actually truly one and the same, interconnected. Mm-hmm. In fact, we learn so much more about what we're doing in this body of work when we think about what's happening in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, before we close out our conversation, I have to ask you my signature question because I know that the audience is waiting to hear.
Yes.
What is your favorite dish?
So I have to say it's lasagna. Multi-layered, yes, multi-layered. It takes a long time to prepare, but boy, it's so filling, right?
Yes, it's yummy. So are we talking veggie lasagna or meat lasagna or spinach
Probably
lasagna?
Meat lasagna, though. One day I'm sure I'll become a vegetarian. My mother's actually vegetarian, so I grew up as the meat eater with a vegetarian mom. So I'm sure it'll one day rub off on me.
One day.
That's right.
At least mom is hoping, right?
One day it'll sink in. Yeah. She was right all along. She was right. See, example where mom is right.
Thank you so much, Arthur. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you today. I am definitely going to link hiring for diversity in the show notes, as well as any other websites where people can connect with you because, they may have questions that they want to direct at you.
I would love it. I would love to connect. And thank you so much for having me today. This was so much fun.
Hey, did you enjoy that episode? If so, please leave a review. It would mean the world, but only if it's a good one and you really did enjoy it. In which case, it would be awesome if you help support my work over at patreon.com/Sedruola Maruska. And finally, before you go, don't forget diversitydish.com. I'd love to work with you. See you soon.